This week, 60 Minutes did a terrifying report about how bird flu is poised to be the next pandemic. Now, we can't show you 60 Minutes videos from here because they take our videos down when we do. Here is the transcript. Look how scary this is. This is Dr. Angela Rasmussen, an American virologist working in Canada. She said that it's not just the number of human cases of bird flu that's alarming, but that the virus is jumping to more mammals. And it's basically E-I-E-I-O. It's chickens and pigs and raccoons, and she just goes down the list. She says she can't sleep at night and that we need to be actively testing for it and looking for it, or it's going to explode before our very eyes. Bill Whitaker says that if this does, in fact, become the next pandemic, he says it would make COVID look like a walk in the park. Dr. Pierre Corey is the founder of the Leading Edge Clinic and author of The War on Ivermectin, the medicine that saved millions and could have ended the pandemic. He joins us to discuss. So, doctor, how worried are you? Are you able to sleep at night, or are you up counting sheep like this virologist from Canada?
You're asking me. I am not worried at all. I mean, as you guys almost kind of pointed out, I mean, what makes an expert is pattern recognition, right? We've seen this playbook before, right? Instill fear at the same time that you come out with a fast-track approved vaccine, a terrifying vaccine, a self-amplifying mRNA vaccine, for avian flu, and you're trying to create and drive a market to get vaccinated. And, Clayton, I listened to you just a moment ago, and like you, I don't think this playbook works anymore. I mean, their big show was COVID. They've been trying to do it again. I remember our smallpox pandemic that they tried to scare us with, right? That the whole thing was silly. This one, although I'm a little dismissive, avian flu, if it does jump to humans, which there's no, conclusive evidence that's doing that to any significant degree, it's all potential. That does have a higher mortality rate. That is difficult. But here's the thing. The real reason why I'm not worried, two of them. One, we have learned so much about how to treat viruses. I have a dozen therapeutics in my toolbox, which I know would cure avian flu. That's number one. Number two, and this is where it gets absurd, we shouldn't even be talking about avian flu. It could be eradicated today just by treating the water that the chickens drink. There's something called chlorine dioxide, which is at high levels. It can be used as a disinfectant. It's also used as a water purifier, but it's the ultimate biocide. It kills viruses, fungi, bacteria, all pathogens. All you have to do is raise the concentration in their drinking water, and we wouldn't be talking about this. But I'm hard to come up with simple solutions to apparently intractable problems.
It seemed crazy. I mean, watching that 60 Minutes clip, I mean, they really are pushing this agenda. So do you think it seems like it's right out of this playbook where they're trying to get us all scared, and then they're really trying to activate the vaccine manufacturers? Like you mentioned it a second ago. Do you think that that's the playbook here, is really to sort of, all right, we got to fast track billions of dollars in these new vaccines?
I do. I mean, I think I'm seeing that pattern also around this measles, right? I don't know if you guys are aware, but I was involved with children's health events and reviewing the cases of these two supposed measles deaths. They are amplifying that and fear-mongering that. Those children did not die of measles by any stretch of the imagination, but yet they're trying to fear-monger everyone into rushing to get an MMR vaccine. And, maybe I am oversimplifying and drawing rapid conclusions, but where are the cases? Why are they doing a 60 Minutes on it right now? There's no evidence that it's harming us or that it's a true threat to us. But I think it's the beginning steps of that playbook, right, is to start to foment the fear, bring awareness to it, and then hopefully people be receptive to whatever their newest single solution is that's highly profitable to the vaccine industry. You don't hear about simple, low-cost, available, safe solutions that don't bring profits, and I know of many of them.
Well, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, declared a state of emergency over bird flu last year, right before Christmas. Why has he not looked into treating the water if it's such a state of emergency? What the hell is he doing in that frantic state?
Well, you're leading me to an uncomfortable answer, which is maybe they don't want a solution. Maybe the solution that they want is the solution they're providing, right? And there's a lot of incentives to that being the solution. And And that's what is just endlessly, to say I'm disappointed or disturbed. I don't think there are words to really describe the way I see these authorities and institutions of government and society, the way they behave. I mean, they're really, they seem influenced to achieve a certain outcome and a certain solution at the disregard of all other safer, simpler ones.
Right. And one thing, I'm sorry, let me just, last year we talked to Dr. Kelly Victory, and she said, look, we knew how to treat COVID. We weren't allowed to say so. And
you were not allowed to say so,
right.
Dr. Corey.
So that's what she's worried about with bird flu, is what you just said. We do know how to treat bird flu. What if we're not allowed to say so if and when this happens as a media pandemic?
Again, you're calling out the playbook, right? So in order to do what we were just talking about, you have to suppress effective early treatments. They did that incredibly successfully in COVID, starting with, and I've talked about this in the journal, I mean, I nailed their playbook. I mean, the number one step is to publish articles in high impact journals showing that these safe, effective treatments actually don't work. They manipulate studies to do that. Then that gives them the foundation to enact all sorts of policies and punishments for those who decide to willfully ignore those august, high quality, rigorous trials. And it's a tired playbook, but that's going to be part of it. You guys know this. That's going to be part of it. If avian flu becomes a real thing, and I did what I did with my colleagues and my organization back in COVID with the FLCC, we try to put out treatment protocols, and people start to use some of the modalities that we recommend, you're going to find the medical boards coming after them. The same stuff, persecutions. I mean, it is really a very it's a rapacious industry. And the way in which they drive business and fight competition, it's not like any other industry at all. They literally go after people's livelihoods, their reputations, their credibilities. It's not like the iPhone beating the BlackBerry. Right. True competition. Here you come up with a different solution that threatens their market. They do not play in pharma. I mean, that is a criminal syndicate. We have many decades of evidence that they literally behave like a criminal syndicate. They do not care about our health. They put profits before people all the time. And they pull these shenanigans to amazing financial success. We have to get
I saw the fugitive. I know.
Chairman Mao would have been very happy about this. I mean, this is not capitalism at work. You're picking winners and losers, and you have partners inside the government who are picking winners and losers, and they're silencing through censorship people like yourself, Dr. Peter McCullough, Dr. Robert Malone, a whole host of doctors we've had on the show who've been silenced. But so we're out in front of it now, right? You mentioned off the top that there's at least a dozen different modalities, things that you could be able to use to stop avian flu if it did make that jump in humans or whatever to cure it and to fix it. So put it on the record right now. You don't have to go through all 12 of them. But if there are people who are scared right now watching this, hopefully none of them ever watch CBS or 60 Minutes who watch our show. But we've got tens of thousands of people watching us right now live. So if they wanted to stock up on something in their home, just to have it in their medicine cabinet, what would be something that you would recommend?
So first and foremost, I would say the one that has the evidence base already that is sort of nasopharyngeal sterilization or disinfection. So things like iodine sprays, xylitol sprays. We know they're antiviral. The nasal carriage and pharyngeal apparatus has the highest burden of those viruses. And we know if you reduce viral loads simply by topical applications, mouthwashes, sprays, you actually reduce mortality rates as well as time to recovery. That's just one, right? Then there are others which are a little bit more theoretical. So for instance, ivermectin, very good broad antiviral. Things like nitazoxanide, which isn't very available here, but it's available in South America and Africa. Those have broad antiviral properties. And then I'm going to come back to a really dangerous topic, which is chlorine dioxide, which is very widely available. It's excellent at killing all infectious pathogens, and it's actually safe to take at therapeutic levels in water. We know what the safe levels for routine drinking water disinfection are, but those levels are far below any toxicity levels, and therapeutic ranges are just above that. I'm just going to come out on record saying that if I got avian flu tomorrow, that's what I would use. in terms of what I think would be the most potent. But there's also things like, if we knew it was coming, we should have a national campaign to replenish vitamin D levels. We know the higher your vitamin D, that your chances of dying from any infection are markedly reduced. And so I think there's a bunch of sunlight. Sunlight's what saved most people in the 1918 flu. And so there's lots of just different approaches, not only to maintain and make robust your immune system, but also that have antiviral properties. Things like artemisinin, right, which is a native. It comes from a plant that was highly effective in COVID. I've heard from colleagues from different countries, they had no problems with COVID using that. So there's lots of options that are safe, that have been well studied and used. And so they're not like risky proposals. And I think they would just put forth so much potential benefit that this fear mongering wouldn't stick.
Yeah.
Now,
and I think, sorry.
What do you think?
No, I was going to say, but none of what you just said there is going to make Big Pharma a lot of money. So they're going to probably silence you and try to hide it,
Right.
Sunlight.
We should make clear we're not diagnosing you. If you think you have bird flu or anything like it, you should talk about these treatments with your doctor.
Dr. Corey, I'm not a doctor. I
Right.
just play one on television.
So we need to make that clear. Now, one thing that I've started to see the media come to a crescendo is about tuberculosis. We've seen that in the UK, they have a 13% rise in cases over the last year in tuberculosis, which is serious. We see in the United States now 8% increase in cases. Just this week, my son said that someone he knew at school had tuberculosis. And in the year 2025, we do not vaccinate for it in most developed countries. If this had been the pandemic, maybe we would have reacted very differently. Is this a new media scare, do you think? Or how do we assess what the media is telling us now about rise in tuberculosis?
Okay, now you guys are officially triggering me, and I'm saying that somewhat humorously. And the reason why is,
okay,
all right, let me speak to your question. I do not think that is about fear mongering or trying to drive, arms to get vaccines for TB. There is no vaccine for TB. So that for that reason, no. But when I say you're triggering me is that article about this unexplained rise in TB cases. What I get triggered of is that's not the only disease that is surging across the world. There's 13 different infectious diseases that are surging in countries all across the world. Mystery pneumonias, viruses, even older ones. There's strep that's going around. There's brain-eating fungi rises in cases. Innumerable infectious diseases, of which TB is one of them. And what triggers me is every time you read an article by this, and there's one article in Bloomberg for about 8 months ago, which did an amazing review of all the epidemiology of these rising infections. Every article, you know what they come up with the reason for this? Again, this is the not calling out the elephant in the room, which is the massive immune dysregulation, immune suppression after a global mRNA vaccine campaign. That is what we're seeing. That article is literally calling out to these disturbing rises in infectious illnesses that are hitting people in sectors. Like if you read that article on TB, they are finding TB in people without traditional risk factors. Nowhere is it mentioned that there's a vaccine. The one reason they gave in that article for why those TB cases is because of interruptions to medical care from the pandemic. So there's delays in diagnosis. Absolute nonsense. On its face, that makes no sense with TB. You don't diagnose TB until you get symptoms. So you don't tell me that this is delays in care. And so it's part and parcel of the tragic humanitarian consequences of the folly of an mRNA global vaccine campaign. And we're paying for it now. People are getting sick with illnesses they traditionally weren't getting sick from, not only infections, but cancers. And that's just the plain reality. I've deeply studied on this, and I'm sorry to be myself fear-mongering, but we're in trouble. What they did in COVID, we're still paying for, and people are getting sick as a result.
Yeah, you were warning about it. I mean, I wish you weren't canceled over it. I wish people would have paid attention to it. Well, you've written a book, The War on Ivermectin. But I want to get you out of here on two last questions, Doc, which is, well, how do we treat this? If you have this spike protein, if you've got this in your body, all these people are getting sick, these 13 highly contagious diseases across the world. What is your recommendation for people now to get this out of their body? Can they?
Yeah, so I specialize in that. That's what my clinic does. let me just speak to TB because, I started a new nonprofit with colleagues called Rebuild Medicine, and we are doing some that RFK Jr. has mentioned as part of his policy agenda, which is that we are furthering research into repurposed drugs. We are about to fund and start a study. I won't tell you what country it is, but we're studying the efficacy of chlorine dioxide in TB. So we're all looking for new solutions for infectious illnesses. But to your question in terms of vaccine injury, Clayton, that would be an hour-long episode because there's no single thing. And even that question of can we get rid of spike protein, we don't really have commercially available tests for measuring spike loads. We do tend to follow spike antibody levels, which we think is a proxy. I do have a number of things that can reduce those levels. I just have not yet been convinced that that's the target. I use many different therapies. Not one thing works in everyone. I can see 2 patients with vaccine injury who appear very similarly, and 2 therapies will work great in the first one and do nothing in the second. So it really just, I'll finish my answer by saying that is a very complex and idiosyncratic disease for which you need to work with patients, and you have to do repeated therapeutic trials using, pharmacologic or supplements or nutraceuticals that have mechanisms of action that can marry the disturbances in their pathophysiology. And so it's not a short answer, and I'm still working at it. I've been at it 3 years. I am 100 times better at treating it than I was 3 years ago, but I need to be 100 times more because it's still a tough disease to treat.
Well, we'll have you. We'll do a whole hour-long interview with you on vaccine
Sure.
injury. We'll do that. So we'll put that on the book. So we'll talk to our team and make that happen. So I will get you out of here on this. You wrote the book War on Ivermectin. President Trump it seems like major moves towards making ivermectin available to Americans in a larger way. I mean, if you would have said this like a few years ago, you would probably have fallen off of your chair because you were silenced. You were canceled for telling people about ivermectin. I mean, what was your response to hearing the Trump administration wants to make it available more readily for Americans?
I feel not only vindicated, but so satisfied because I think it's the work of myself and my colleagues. We were conflicts of interest free, deeply studied, scientific, putting out accurate information, and to find that it resonates and is gaining traction. And, you mentioned Trump, but I'm as equally as impressed with the states, right? There's, I think, almost a dozen states now that have legislation on the books to make it available over the counter. Its utility in treating cancer is becoming more and more widely recognized. And so, the Nobel Prize winning discoverer called it the wonder drug, and it truly is. It's unique in our total pharmaceutical armamentarium over decades. It's one of the most unique medicines in terms of its unparalleled safety and broad applicability. And so I can't think of anything better for, furthering the treatment of illnesses than having the role of ivermectin be recognized. So it's very gratifying. And so I'm happy to see that it's gaining traction and people are realizing that we weren't misinformationists. We were just trying to do the right thing and teach people things that we thought could help them.
Yeah. Tell that to Jimmy Kimmel, who was making fun of people for using horse goo or whatever his comment was that time. And it's kind of amazing because, even on YouTube, we broadcast on multiple places, but in their terms of service on YouTube, they specifically forbid the use of that language. Like you couldn't talk about that. You couldn't even use the I word. It's unbelievable. Like the censorship industrial complex that was put in place. So we've come a long way in a few years.
I did an interview with Matt Taibbi. I always remember this. Did an interview with him a few years ago, and he wrote an article. I was profiled in it, and he called me the ghost of the internet because whatever podcast stuff went on, they disappeared. They were taken down, shadow banned, demonetized. And
wow.
I think I know I did an interview with you. I don't know if you put it up on YouTube, but it's a pretty good way to get your head cut off.
Yeah, no. I think at the time, because it was still banned on YouTube, we could only release it on Rumble. Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
And now here we are. Like we're live on YouTube right now, thousands of people watching. So it's like we've come a long way, I think. Yeah. So it's good. I think we're making some strides in that regard. Dr. Pierre Kory, great to see you. Thank you so much. And we'll get it on the books. We'll have you on for a long time. We'll talk about vaccine injuries.
Love it. Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Perfect. Thanks, Doc. Great to see you.